All right. Hi, everyone. We're delighted to have you all join us today to celebrate Global Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD. So today we'll be facilitating a showcase and a discussion of collaboration, innovation, and student leadership for ESD. Right. So the webinar is delivered by students organizing for sustainability as part of our celebrations for a decade of responsible futures, which is our flagship supported change program that I'll speak about in just a moment. We have a full agenda for the hour, so I've started right on the dot. I'll start by introducing responsible futures and students organizing for sustainability, and then I'm going to introduce the first ever responsible futures impact report, including findings and how to access the full report. We'll then hear from 4 Responsible Futures institutions on their work to embed sustainability in learning in partnership with students. And then we'll facilitate a panel discussion with a really excellent set of panel members. So we're really excited to have and to hear from such a broad range of voices today who've been involved in Responsible Futures and wider ESD work. And I think this really reflects the program's reach, but also how ESD can and should reach students, educators, and communities at all institutions and across borders as well. So the session will be recorded, and the recording and the slides will be shared as a follow-up resource. I also want to note that the Q&A function will be open, so please feel free to use it to share resources and ideas, and we'll try and respond in written format to any of your inquiries. So, Students Organizing for Sustainability, or SOS, is an education charity that's focused on sustainability and climate justice. And we were developed by the student movement. So, we deliver campaigns and programs. We are involved in advocacy work as well that's focused on transforming education so that students can both learn about sustainability, but are also supported to develop skills to lead on sustainability. So my name's Sonia Prez. I'm a senior project manager at Students Organising for Sustainability based in Scotland, and I manage Responsible Futures. And I'm joined by my colleague Rajni Baraj, who also works with me on Responsible Futures, and Quinn Runkle, who is the Director of Education at Students Organising for Sustainability. And Quinn will be facilitating the panel discussion and closing remarks. So, Responsible Futures is a whole institution approach to embedding holistic sustainability across the formal and the informal curriculum in universities and colleges. The program has been delivered in the UK for 10 years, really excitingly, and our international pilot began in October 2023 in partnership with the International Association of Universities, or IAU. We're launching the international program fully in October of 2024, so do get in touch if you're interested in learning more about it. Responsible Futures is a supported change program and an accreditation mark that puts sustainability at the heart of student learning. So, through the program, we provide a framework and accompanying support to foster an environment for staff and students to work together to embed sustainability into teaching and learning. There's also a student-led audit, which provides the institution with really valuable feedback and recommendations and insight from their students. And this audit also determines Responsible Futures accreditation. So if we zoom back a bit, what Responsible Futures does is it legitimizes and it mainstreams education for sustainable development, ultimately helping to ensure that students leave education with knowledge, skills, and attributes needed to create a more just and sustainable society. So today, we're really pleased to launch the first ever Responsible Futures Impact Report. So the Impact Report is structured around 4 key outcomes that the program has supported over the past decade. The report was also developed in partnership with Responsible Futures institutions and students who were able to feed into what they'd like to present and how. The report features 10 case studies and a plethora of quotes and photos celebrating ESD initiatives by participating institutions. The full report is available on our website, and we'll also send you a link in a follow-up email. And yeah, I really want to encourage you to take a look because there's lots of really interesting information in there. So within the report, I'll just go back. Within the report, there are some key figures that we highlight. Over the past decade, through the program, we've worked with 48 institutions, reaching nearly 1,100,000 students globally. We've worked with students to lead on over 55 audits. We've worked with institutions and their students to take over 3,000 actions for ESD. We've worked with over 230 student auditors to lead Responsible Futures audits, and we facilitated over 75 network learning meetings and events and spaces. So in terms of the 4 outcomes that structure the report, the first outcome is increased whole institution approaches for ESD. So this means increasing the range of stakeholders working together for ESD through Responsible Futures, ensuring that there's that shared responsibility as well as capacity and continuity of ESD work, and ensuring that ESD is representative of all the priorities and needs of institutional stakeholders and local communities. Outcome 2 is increased student leadership for ESD, so supporting students to develop leadership skills to contribute to sustainability, working with students to co-create fit-for-purpose education that reflects the current challenges we're facing, and then building long-lasting and transparent relationships between institutions and their students on this important work. Outcome 3 is increased connectivity and collaboration between institutions for ESD, so bringing together staff and students from around the world to share learning and experiences, and seeking out as well as offering opportunities to collaborate on sustainability projects and initiatives. And then lastly is outcome 4, which is increased innovation for embedding sustainability in learning. So changing what's taught, how it is taught, and the learning environment through events and partnerships and projects, as well as co-creating approaches to different teaching pedagogies with students. So that's a very whistle-stop tour of the impact report, but please do take a moment to take a look at it because there's some interesting case studies and examples in there. So now what I'd like to do is invite Responsible Futures institutions who will be showcasing their work to come forward. So there are 4 institutions that have joined us today, and their case studies very much align with the 4 outcomes structuring the Responsible Futures impact report. So just before I hand over to the contacts, the first case study will be Dr. Andrew Reeves from De Montfort University. Then we have Celia Davidson Francis from the University of the West Indies. We'll then hear from Beth Lewis from the University of Exeter, and last but not least, Cassie Brennan from Mohawk College. So we are running a tight schedule because there's so much interesting conversations to be had and content to talk through. And I hate to be the bad guy, but I will have to ask presenters to finish at the 5-minute mark, and you'll hear from me when you're about 4 minutes in. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Andrew Reeves from De Montfort University to begin. Thank you, Andrew.
Nice one. Thank you, Sonia. Hi, folks. Yeah, really great to hear that introduction and how the 4 intended outcomes Responsible Futures totally speak to our experience here at De Montfort. So we're in Leicester in the UK. That's a picture of our campus. We're very lucky to be next to the river. And we've been a Responsible Futures partnership with our Students' Union since 2018-19. We've been accredited several times. We're due for accreditation again next year. And it was good to see our students actually in the pictures in the Sonia slides. The accreditation process is always a highlight, I would say, in my ESD calendar. It's such a positive thing for the students and for the staff as an experience, never mind the wider process of Responsible Futures. A few things about DMU. So a few strengths we bring to this agenda of ESD. We are one of the UN's global academic hubs for the SDGs, for SDG 16. We are a highly culturally, ethnically diverse city and institution, and so a big aspect of our work on sustainability has been the decolonising agenda, and we've had a major project around that over several years, and we integrate that into our work on sustainability and how we understand the issues. That's a thing to highlight as well. We were a Responsible Futures host partnership a few years ago, and that's a really nice aspect of the scheme that allows institutions to step up and show a bit of leadership or share where they have good practice with other partners. And we brought in our work on decolonising and having a kind of whole institution view on our work on sustainability as part of that as well. And then the thing I'm going to highlight in this short case study is some work we did over the last year or two with Sonia and others on the call, the ESD and Academic Quality project, as that really was seeded via Responsible Futures. Next slide, please. So this was a project that was funded and supported by the QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency, which is concerned with the quality process that govern taught courses in higher education. which incorporates kind of checks on teaching approaches, assessment, etc., and also the input of students into teaching and learning. And we'd seen guidance from QAA and others on how to address ESD, but we wondered what it looked like in practice for academic quality processes to actually drive and support ESD adoption. So we wanted to examine that and also share experience as a cohort. We gathered a team of 11 universities working with Sonia and SOS to do this over just over a year. And the fact that we could draw motivated people from the Responsible Futures Network was a key thing that made the project work. And it kind of was almost like a deeper version of the regular check-ins that happen via Responsible Futures if you take part. What we did, we all pursued this agenda within our own institutions, got together, shared experiences, and we all had very different contexts. And so what we produced as an output wasn't at all one size fits all. It was very much how do you make progress in the very different and ever shifting context we work in higher education. So we all took steps forward to enhance our practices. At my institution, that involved guidance for our academic quality team and training, and similar for our student course reps. We embedded the need to consider sustainability in our partnership agreements for international partnerships and transnational education. And we produced a report with various ideas on how to link this to strategy, how to link this to training and development and other issues, which you can see there and find online. Next slide, please. So I thought I'll just highlight one aspect of what came out of that report. I don't expect you to read all the detail, but we came up with some succeed principles for pursuing ESD, which drew upon what was common across all the different institutional settings. I'll just flag a few things here. One is to have, wherever you can, an approach that aligns with the strategy and the goals of your institution, that has its own character, that depends on what your institution is and what it's about. There's stuff about the culture and ethos of how you work. So not expecting to crack this all at once, to be an unfolding process, year on year, making improvements, engaging more people, and an empowering process, both for students and for staff, kind of so they take ownership of the agenda and they get to impact what happens in their own subject area. But then also there's devil in the detail around all of this. You know, how do you actually create feedback loops in these processes so that when people fill out forms saying how they're addressing sustainability, that insight gets to be shared back to staff and to students to better inform future design, so people know what it looks like when you're making progress. I won't go into all the detail because there's lots there. If you're interested in the report, you can find it online. Drop me a line if that is of interest. I'll pause there because it's just a short case study, but there you go. That's something we've done that was seeded by Responsible Futures.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And as Andrew mentioned, feel free to contact him. We also have the report signposted in the impact report, and in follow-up resources, we'll be sure to make sure that any contact information is included in slides if you have follow-up questions. Thanks so much, Andrew, for that really interesting case study. What I'll do now is I'll hand over to Celia Davidson Francis from the University of the West Indies. Thank you, Celia.
Thank you, everyone. Hello. I'm delighted to be here, and congrats to Sonia and team for a decade of responsible futures. Today, I'll be speaking about the sustainability focus of civic engagement at my university, which we call the UE or the UWI. Next slide, please. So here's a map of our institution. It's 5 campuses over 17 countries, and responsible futures and sustainability, as you can imagine, requires behavior change. And with the geographic borders and 17 national laws that impact UWI's operations, change is not easy. However, the directors of student services of all 5 campuses are very receptive to mainstreaming sustainability into student clubs and associations. So the responsible futures at our university, as we're a relative newcomer, will start with civic engagement. Responsible futures is already having an impact on our institution in terms of our directors taking a sustainability perspective. Next slide, please. So just in terms of definition, we highlight in civic engagement, volunteerism, student learning outcomes, community service, and social responsibility. And our focus is via a whole institution approach. All non-curricular activities will have a sustainability perspective, supporting the 17 UN SDGs. Next slide, please. So just to highlight that our mission is to empower UWI stakeholders to be catalysts for positive change and to cultivate a vibrant culture of civic engagement within the UWI. Next slide. The aim is slide 5, yes. So the aim is to increase student participation by 10% by 2025 and thereafter incrementally with yearly targets based on prevailing conditions. So looking at goal number 1, we have currently approximately 203 clubs and societies across the 5 campuses, which impact between 600 to 5,000 students, depending on the campus. Goal number 2, you'll note here in red that all civic engagement activities fall under the 17 SDGs and aim to positively impact one or more of the following factors which make up the SDGs. A quick example, our engineering clubs may focus on energy and sustainable cities, for example, in their projects, or foreign language clubs may focus on facilitating peace and justice, as these subjects promote cross-cultural and linguistic understanding. Goal 3, we already have internships and job shadowings occurring in this particular outcome, which develops civic responsibility, citizenship, and leadership, as well as career readiness. Goal 4, we have a program called the First Year Experience, which is really about orienting students to being at a university. And this will now promote a sustainability mindset. And goal number 5, we have current partners, which include resorts such as Swept Away, Caribbean companies like Caribbean Jobs, Royal Bank, and Future Center Trust. And these partners and new ones will be encouraged to be sustainable. So we hope to have impact on communities as well. Slide 6, next slide, please. Okay, this strategic development timeline shows how the sustainability-focused civic engagement plan is proposed to roll out between now and next year, and you'll see the dates given at the end of each point. So first, we are doing an inventory of existing programs to establish a baseline, then an assessment of current support and any recommendations and adjustments, then an annual regional calendar to track and monitor. And as you can imagine, across 17 countries, that's quite a feat. We'll also track existing and potential partnerships, and very importantly, track civic engagement activities annually under each SDG across each campus. So we'll really be able to see the impact. Next slide. In terms of demonstrating impact, our focus will be on 3 things: a civic engagement online repository to highlight our best practices, lessons, and stories. The second is to raise public awareness of civic engagement via our student guild, or I think you say council, and encourage participation, and also to publicly recognize civic engagement impacts via awards and recognition. Next slide. Our major impacts remain finances, as I'm sure you will also agree, and the fact that humans tend to have a very individualistic rather than collaborative approach and seem to love the siloed approach. So we're continuing to stress collaboration rather in sustainability. Next slide. Regarding our operational structure, the oversight will be by the regional director, which is me, for Responsible Futures at the UWI. And at the campus level, it will be managed by the directors of student services and development at each campus. And final slide, no, almost final slide. So I just wanted to highlight that our Civic Engagement Action Plan is a comprehensive program aimed at enhancing civic engagement through structured goals and strategic partnerships. We are equipping students to learn and lead on sustainability in civic engagement, and the directors themselves are very excited about the structured and collaborative approach that this affords them as well, and have really embraced the framework. And by aligning our civic engagement efforts with the 17 UN SDGs, we are going to create an all-encompassing sustainability impact, both within the university for our stakeholders and for the societies and the nations that we serve. And the final slide, I think, is just for me to say thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And we're happy to be on our Responsible Futures journey.
Thank you so much, Celia, for that really interesting overview. And yeah, Celia is University of the West Indies is one of the pilot institutions in the international program, and we get to meet and engage with a lot of really brilliant students from the University of the West Indies. So thanks so much for facilitating that. And I think that's a pretty helpful segue on this idea of students and working with students. I'd like to now introduce Bethany Lewis from the University of Exeter to talk more about the work that the university is doing to engage and empower students through Responsible Futures. Thanks, Bethany. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you so much for inviting me to present this case study. So a little bit of context for myself. I started as a student intern working on Responsible Futures at the university last year, so at the beginning of 2023, and I'm now a graduate intern, and I work full-time for the university within the sustainability team. So I think it's kind of great context for what you're about to see. If we could go on to the next slide, please. So we joined Responsible Futures only a couple of years ago, and we're actually working towards our accreditation date, which is next month for our student-led audit, and basically the way we gained momentum and really got things off the ground in terms of legitimizing ESD work is an academic lead used our already existing student campus partnership scheme to employ students. This happened last year, as I said, at the beginning of 2023. I was one of the first student interns, a team of 3 at the time. So what these students do is we lead the working groups, we coordinate a lot of the evidence gathering. So that's through research, interviews, general kind of fact finding about what's going on at the university. They coordinate a lot of the monthly meetings we have, and also lead some of that stakeholder engagement. And so we kind of have one student that coordinates working with the student union and another that works more on the professional development side of things, depending on where our priorities are at that time. Further things that our students work on is actually campaigns and actions that come out of finding those gaps in our delivery of ESD as a result of Responsible Futures. So it's been a really great way to instigate and really kickstart some momentum on some of that change. So the Student Campus Partnership Scheme comes from our Career Zone, which is a really, really strong part of the University of Exeter. It was already set up and we've just utilised that scheme. Overall, over the last 18 months, we've had 7 student interns and we've had 4 short-term facilitators, which means they've kind of worked for us for less than 10 hours at most. Whereas the SCPs, the student interns, work for us for a period of 3 to 1 intern has now worked for us for about a year. So it can really vary depending on their own commitments, what year they are in study and things like that. We pay them fairly for their time. We pay them an hourly wage, which is in the UK well above minimum wage. And that is something that's so important to us because we want to really show the students and also the staff that are working towards them how much we value their input. They're leaders of this program and they need to be we need to recognize kind of the time and energy that they put on to forwarding our goals in delivering really high quality ESD for all of our students. Also, just to note that when we do our student-led audit next month, we are also paying our 10 separate auditors the same wage. And as I said, it's well above minimum. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So the impacts of this programme is we've really tried to equalise further the hierarchy that could be quite implicit in these working groups between staff, academics, and then the students. I think giving them those titles adds to a lot of the legitimacy and confidence of students to go into that working group meeting and be able to set the agenda, assign actions and really lead those groups, because often what we see at the university is the staff don't always have the time to coordinate some of the Responsible Futures campaigns, and so bringing these students in really kickstarts that momentum. Another really great impact is the fact that some of these student interns have been here for quite a long time, and it's empowering that student voice over a long period so we can build up those relations between students and staff. I think that's really important in just the trusting nature of this working group. By paying them, of course, that reduces the financial barriers for students to engage with sustainable campaigns and programs. So we're definitely working on kind of the intersectionality and accessibility of these campaigns. And for the students themselves, we have seen really, really lovely career developments already. Actually, sometimes we'd like to extend student contracts in these internships, and they've already gone and got a bigger, broader contract. Someone's working for the civil service as a result of this already over the summer. So sometimes, you know, this has really kickstarted their career journeys, which I'm so proud of. I've put a few examples there. For example, myself, I'm now the graduate intern and I manage the student interns in the Responsible Futures programme, as well as some other programmes at the university. One student intern, because we hire them in cohorts, we've kind of promoted them to the lead student intern. And as I said, 4 SCPs out of 7 have now gone on to external internship opportunities in sustainability. So for our next steps, these students are really passionate and really almost natural leaders when you give them that confidence, but we want to make sure that they're not overburdening themselves or being overburdened with the responsibility of delivering some of these ESD impacts. We're also looking at widening participation criteria and making sure that when we do hire students, we're being as intersectional and as accessible as possible. And we'd also like to build on the momentum that we've had over the last 18 months as we look to post audit and where that goes. So yeah, that's me. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I'll give you back to Sonia.
Thanks, Beth. That's a really interesting example of working with students and kind of considering how to support students to be involved. And so on a similar note around democratizing education and working with students, I'll now hand over to Cassie from Mohawk College to talk more about your work in this area. Thanks, Cassie, and Alison.
So much, Sonia. Happy to be here. I'm going to actually hand it over to Alison to start off to give a little bit of context about the college. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alison. I'm the manager of sustainability office at Mohawk College. Just you can go to the next slide, Sonia. Yeah, so just to give a bit of context, Mohawk College, we're located in Hamilton, Canada. We're on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg nations. We're a mid-sized city. We're about 70 kilometers southwest of Toronto. We have 34,600 full-time, part-time, and apprenticeship students in about 200 programs. We have 4 campuses, including a trade school, an aviation school, and a health school, which we have in partnership with McMaster University. 51% of our students are from the Hamilton area. 60% of students are of domestic origin, and then 40% of our students are from international origin. So we have a big international student population. And about a third of our students are actually the first in their family to attend post-secondary. So we joined the Responsible Futures International Pilot in January of this year. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So just before we joined the pilot in November of 2023, we launched an ambitious new climate action plan, 3 pillars of action under campus operations, student learning, and applied research. When it comes to formal curriculum, the college's goals include embedding education for sustainable development across the curriculum, as well as developing and revising programs to directly meet skills that are demanded by the low carbon transition. Next slide. So for this plan, we've established a college-wide governance model to oversee implementation of the plan, which includes working groups under each of the pillars. And we're just setting up our Responsible Futures planning team, which we're establishing as a student-driven group that is going to feed into this governance model that will provide an important student voice to inform and influence our decision-making, especially where it impacts students. The group is going to help us by advising on activities and prioritization, and then creating or co-creating grassroots interventions in support of the Responsible Futures framework. So I'm going to hand it over to Cassie now. She's got a case study about just one of the kind of first actions that we did to get quick student feedback.
Thanks so much. So our situation is that Mohawk Sustainability is always looking to make all of our work backed and empowered by students. However, we joined in January 2024 with a fall audit time. So we were on a very tight timeline, but we wanted to take our first steps in ensuring that students are involved in everything. So in order to establish what our students wanted to see, we needed a quick way to establish student sustainability priorities. And on the next slide, I'll share what that was. I'm ready for the next one, thanks. Amazing. So this is called Tactile Democracy. So we had outreach booths at 3 of our campuses, and students were asked to vote on what was important to them about sustainability using a color-coded button. So there are a wide range of topics, and sustainability is a wide field, but we wanted to ensure that the changes we're making were the ones that were going to be most impactful to the students. So next slide, please. And so the simple activity actually ended up having wider implications. So it was over a span of less than a week, but really only the hours of one business day, that I personally interacted with 530 students. It was well received, and they were included from satellite campuses, which is important because they have smaller populations, so their voices needed to be heard. And we uncovered that our students want to learn most and understand how humans affect nature and the connections there, as well as understanding how to create change. Next slide, please. And so why was finding this out important? Well, first off, we're preparing for our student survey. And for this reason, we can actually ask more detailed questions now. So it's almost like not only will we have a whole survey, student-wide, a follow-up survey, but we almost had a pre-survey through this. Additionally, we are redeveloping our sustainability projects fund. And so now we're going to be able to ensure that eligible projects are actually backed by students. So they'll answer the questions. Is this going to help students understand how humans affect nature? Is this going to help them understand how to create systemic change? So those will be projects that are prioritized. Lastly, this will also help us embed responsible futures criteria in our outreach activities more, as now we understand that they want more of a systemic view of sustainability rather than a personal action scale. Next slide. Thank you so much. So some of our next steps and how this little activity led into more is that we will use this information to inform our planning team's greater activities. So not only the students who are sitting on the planning team will be able to talk about their own opinions, but they'll actually be able to back up their peers and ensure that their peers' voices are still being heard and carried through. So they're able to represent their greater student body. Additionally, we can explore other ways to introduce more student voting and quick feedback into everyday decisions, which we've explored, and that's going very well. And lastly, we can share these simple findings of what students want. They've spoken with groups such as clubs, academic departments, and the Student Association, which have all been interested so far. So really a tiny idea to get us kickstarted ended up going far. And thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Cassie and Alison. I think that is a really interesting example of something that seems like it could be a small thing, but having lots of different impacts across the institution. So thank you all to all the presenters for sharing your case studies across further and higher education across different parts of the world. I think just really interesting, varied examples of engaging with students and the whole institution for ESD and those innovative practices as well. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Quinn Runkle, Director of Education at SOS, to facilitate our panel discussion. Thanks, Quinn.
Great. Thank you so much, Sonia. And thank you again to those case study presenters. That was just really brilliant to hear those examples. So the purpose of this panel discussion is to bring together individuals representing organizations and stakeholders working to progress ESD right across the globe. So our discussion over the next half hour will cover what ESD means to these panelists in relation to their roles and organizations, and how we can increase collaboration for ESD. So with that, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our wonderful panelists. The first of whom, Peter Kwasi-Koji, who is the Secretary General of the All Africa Students Union and the Chair of the SOS International Board, sadly cannot be with us here today. So I'm sharing his apologies. There's been flooding in Accra, Ghana, where he is based, and he is without internet. So he sends his apologies, and we're really sorry to be missing him today, but we thank him in his absence for the leadership he's demonstrated through ASU and through SOS International in contributing to this program. So with us, though, are our three other panelists. So let me move on to introducing them. First of whom is Professor Andrew Deeks. Professor Deeks is the Vice Chancellor and President of Murdoch University. Murdoch University is a Responsible Futures International pilot institution. And since joining Murdoch, Professor Deeks has overseen an academic restructure, a refresh of the senior leadership team, and the development of a new strategy, Ngala Kwap Bidi, Building a Brighter Future Together, which has been warmly embraced by the university community. Prior to his role at Murdoch, Professor Deeks was the president of University College Dublin and the Pro-Vice Chancellor at Durham University. Professor Deeks is also the president of the International Association of Universities. So really pleased to have you here, Professor Deeks. Next is Professor Dr. Inga Jaleniana. Professor Jaleniana is the rector at Nicholas Ramirez University and was re-elected for the second five-year term in 2024. Nicholas Ramirez University is also a Responsible Futures International pilot institution, and the professor also serves as the administrative board member at the International Association of Universities since 2016 and was elected vice president in 2023, now supervising the IAU priority area of internationalization in higher education. She also serves on the board of directors of the European Women Rectors Association since 2021 and was awarded a doctor honoris from Dongseo University in Korea in 2022. So really pleased to have you here as well. And finally, Mark Mans, who is a program specialist at UNESCO with the section of Education for Sustainable Development, working with member states and partner organizations to implement the ESD for 2030 roadmap and framework. So thank you all of you for being here today. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. So I'll kick that off now, starting with yourself, Andrew. Can you share with us, Andrew, what you feel the importance of ESD and programs like Responsible Futures hold in a global higher education context, speaking from your perspective, both as president of IAU and vice chancellor and president at Murdoch University?
Well, thank you very much, Quinn, and it's a pleasure to join you today on this celebration of 10 years of Responsible Futures. I acknowledge to start with that I'm speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, that we at Murdoch University are proud to continue a tradition of teaching and learning on these lands that dates back thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. So from an international association of universities perspective, a program like this is a way that we can bring together universities across the world and share learnings and share best practice, but do that in a common framework. So I think the key advantage of programs like Responsible Futures is that they provide a framework which is shared. They provide a common language, a way that we can focus on addressing the issues of sustainable development rather than engaging in internal discussions within universities as to how we should be addressing those issues and how we should be defining terms, etc. So it's really advantageous to have a program like this that means that from the start, and that's particularly important from a student perspective because each student cohort really has a limited time at the university. So a program like Responsible Futures means that the students can be engaged from the start, see a program through without having to go through all that internal design within the university. They can collaborate with students at other universities. There can be these shared learnings. And I think from an IAU perspective, that's what we want to facilitate across the world and to ensure that as we address these problems, recognizing that sustainability is not an issue for one country. It's not an issue for one region. It's an issue for the whole world together. We're only sustainable as a global society if we address sustainability together. So the IAU really facilitates that connection across regions, across countries, to ensure that we take that approach. From an individual university perspective, then, as I say, the framework is very useful because it means that instead of putting resources into developing our own framework and our own approach, we can put the resources into following the approach that's already been developed, and we can then utilize best practice from other partners. So while the international part of the Responsible Futures program is now very new and we're part of that pilot, we're able to learn from that 10 years of experience that the UK universities have had.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrew. Inga, I'd like to come to you next, please, to share your perspective, similarly to Andrew, on what importance ESD and programs like Responsible Futures hold in this global HE context, speaking from your role as Vice President at IAU and as Rector at MRU as well. So over to you, please, Inga.
Thank you, dear Quinn. I am so glad to share my thoughts also in this distinguished panel. So ESD and programs like Responsible Futures can be truly acknowledged as the main success factor and as the basis for SDGs of Agenda 2030 implementation in higher education sector. Universities globally are uniting forces to equip their students and also the whole university communities with knowledge, skills, values to address global environmental and societal challenges. More and more universities all over the world are mainstreaming sustainability as the integral part of their institutional strategies. And the whole institutional approach towards sustainability provides us all an excellent framework for embedding it into curricula, research, community engagement, and fostering this holistic approach to higher education that prepares students to tackle global challenges. And we know that students are those who have enthusiasm, youth maximalism, courage to question the status quo. And the students have always been the driving force behind societal change and innovations. And we as universities, as educational institutions, from very nature, are places for learning, experimentation, providing place for people from different cultural, generational backgrounds to meet, exchange, network, build partnerships and lifelong professional friendships. And programs like Responsible Futures serve as living lab in the institutional and international settings. And they unite students and universities in the search of solutions to the major challenges our planet and people currently face. For me, as the rector of Mykolos Romeris University, it is important to be part of Responsible Futures pilot. And it's important to provide the space and encourage our students to meet by using challenge-based and experimental methods in teaching, learning about climate change, loss of biodiversity, use of resources, equal opportunities, diversity. Also, we are very happy to carry out our institutional sustainability audits because they allow us to make institutional improvements, to constantly review our strategy for sustainability, for sustainable development of our institutions. And I believe that the knowledge which we got from Responsible Future program will help them learn and especially learn in practical application in our institutional settings, which is the great value added in their future careers. And the practice-based knowledge will help them to make informed decisions in all levels: individual, institutional, national, regional, and international as well. And talking from the perspective of International Association of Universities, it is important to encourage also the youth to build and develop international ties, networks between universities, student communities, student unions, academic, administrative staff members, because from those ties and networks we learn the best practices from international partners. Engage academic communities to address interconnected global challenges. And this is making transformations in our communities, in our countries, and making transformations especially in cognitive, social, emotional, and behavioral change that is friendly to our societies and to the future of our existence on the earth.
Thank you so much, Inga. It's so wonderful to hear your perspectives on this. And I think your ambition at the university and through IAU mirrors so much of the purpose of Responsible Futures in this work over the last decade. So really nice to hear your perspectives. Thank you. Next, I'd like to go to Mark Mans from UNESCO. Mark, it would be great to hear from you and on behalf of UNESCO what ESD means to you and what programs like Responsible Futures can do to align with UNESCO's wider mission. So over to you, please, Mark.
Thank you, Quinn, and thank you to the SOS and Responsible Futures for having me here. First, congratulate the 4 case studies. That was very interesting listening to the De Montfort for UWI, Mohawk College, and Exeter. And congratulations on the work that you're doing in terms of education for sustainable development. Yes, ESD, of course, I represent UNESCO, our large international organization promoting ESD, education for sustainable development. So what this means to me, when I think of it and try to distill it, number one, I tried to bring it back to our target 4, our SDG target 4, and emphasizing relevant quality education. And that education can be of many forms and contexts, trying to address many different areas from SDG 1 through to SDG 17. But I think those words, relevant quality education, is something that has been highlighted today in those 4 case studies and from Andrew and Inga as well. What is meaningful to these young people and to educators as well, the whole community, what it really means to us, as a society, as a culture, as people, to be relevant in quality. And through that, we can then achieve sustainable development. Some of the other things I wanted to highlight and echo what has been already said from all the other people's is the importance of the youth engagement and how the different universities or different programs are doing that. I find that is very inspiring because this engagement, whether it be giving the youth a leadership role or providing them opportunities for the civic or community engagement, these opportunities actually lead to those relevant and quality learning outcomes that we can find. There's nothing we hate to hear more from young people saying is we're not learning anything in school because they've got their head in a book and it's not engaging them enough. So providing these opportunities where they can experience life or experience real practical situations, take an active role in their own learning and not just be a recipient of knowledge or a recipient of information. I think this is really important. One of the other things to mention what ESD really means, which comes along with that, is the capacity building. The role that education for sustainable development plays in capacitating people, building capacities, whether that's skills or whether that's attitudes and behaviors. Oftentimes, we think of only learning, but we have to remember that learning is more than just knowing and doing something. We also have to learn to become people as we grow older. We're learning to be, and we also have to learn to work together and be together, live together. If I harken back to our 4 pillars of learning, so learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and learning to live together. I think these are very important points to make in terms of ESD. And I think the Responsible Future is what we've seen today. These case studies present this, each uniquely, differently, individually, in their own way, to engage people and all stakeholders in education for sustainable development. I'll stop there for now. Thank you, Quinn, and thank you to everyone else.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate your reflections on this and for your support from UNESCO being present for this discussion today as well. Thank you. Inga, I'd like to come back to you then to reflect on some of the challenges in this space as well. Could you please share with us what you think some of the challenges for ESD experienced by senior leaders in universities might be, and how we can overcome them through working in collaboration?
Thank you, Quinn. For your question, I think that senior leaders in the university face the major challenge on how to engage people, how to motivate them to take action, to buy in to the existential issue of sustainable development, to walk this extra mile in learning, sharing, connecting to others. So universities construct the current and most importantly, future societies. So therefore, it is important for university leaders to be future-oriented and to make a joint research-based, motivated global movement for ESD. And people are rational in their existence, and senior leaders in universities need to simply be closer to their leaded people, to talk with them, to hear their opinions and insights, to explain and persuade them to engage into ESD, and to create this sense of belonging to the community through sustainability, to the community that cherish the same priorities and understands the concept, the holistic concept of sustainability, and not only understands, but also behaves in those principles. And people need to understand that ESD is for their personal benefit and for the benefit of all the people which surround the community. And although the senior leaders at universities are highly educated and very busy people, it is important for them to constantly engage in lifelong learning activities and daily learn something new. As our world is very complex and dynamic, constantly evolving, new technological, social innovations change our daily work and personal life patterns. And to lead an educational institution, and especially to empower others to engage, needs constant improvement. Senior leaders need to set an example of constant learning and upskilling and make their universities the lifelong learning organizations. And of course, in addition, senior leaders in university need to network, to share their best practices, benchmark their represented universities, to get involved to national, regional, global SDGs related platforms, projects, and in the important mission of raising community awareness on sustainability. And at the beginning, all leaders, and me myself as well, often feel isolated, sometimes even misunderstood. But implementing SDGs often requires significant changes in curricula, teaching methods, research programs, institutional policies, and it is met often with a resistance from faculty and administrative staff accustomed of course, to traditional practices. So it is crucially important for us to meet our peers from different cultures and parts of the world. Although each university is unique and special, but there are a lot of similarities and commonalities among them. I am always saying to my community members that the bicycle is invented already. We need to share and to adapt the best practice from our counterparts and try to implement it in our environments and universities. Therefore, it is very important to engage in international networks and to collaborate, to be able wholeheartedly engage and empower our communities and act as part of a powerful global movement for sustainable development of our society.
Thank you very much, Inga, for those remarks. Mark, I'd like to come back to you next then, please, to share with us how universities and colleges can engage with and collaborate with UNESCO on ESD as one of those strong conveners around the international ESD conversation. So Mark, back to you, please.
Great, thanks, Quinn. Yes, thank you for that question. As you had mentioned in my introduction, that I work with member states and partners, partner organizations. That's where I would put our universities and students into that category. And how we work together often is engaging through events similar to this or large events. I know at the beginning of one of the presentations was the COP, the efforts that Responsible Futures or SOS has been doing at the COP. So we often run, UNESCO often runs a greening education partnership event at the COP 20, whatever the new one is this year, 29. So that would be one way to engage, to promote education efforts, for example, at large events like COP. We also organize other large events with our countries on education for sustainable development in many different forms. And we often need key partners to come and speak about their good practices, universities, Responsibly Futures, SOS partners like this to come and speak, and students as well. That's how we often engage directly. In addition to also engaging on, there was questions in the chat that I noticed some people asking about how to do curriculum, how do we embed curriculum. Another way UNESCO can often engage with the university per se is to work with the researchers or faculty who can help us to prepare guidance on how to integrate curriculum or how to strengthen teacher training programs and so on. So we can engage in those manners as well. In terms of students, we encourage students at the ground level to organize through organizations like yourself, and then come and share with us the work that you're doing. We can't reach out, we can't go to every university, there's just too many to do. And UNESCO has too many different programs going on, but we encourage them to start these efforts at the ground level and then come reach out to us, and we'll find spaces. There's always international events or cross-cultural events that are happening. So we can find you, and we can share information and share good lessons, good practices of how students, how universities are working in terms of ESD. So that's how we can engage. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. And Andrew, I'm going to come to you for the last question, perhaps briefly, to share with us from your perspective how students can engage and collaborate with senior leaders, including vice chancellors like yourself, on ESD initiatives.
Yes, I think as Mark said, what the students need to do is to organize. And the easiest way to organize is through the student union. So usually the presidents will have, the presidents and vice chancellors will have contact with the leadership of the student union. And it's vital that the right students get into those organizations to ensure that the organization works positively with the leadership of the university. So if the student union is focused on the well-being of the students, the well-being of the planet, on these social issues and looking at ways of moving those forward, it's very easy for the union to then work with the leadership of the university If, on the other hand, there are a lot of politics being played in the student union and they're more interested in organizing protests and looking for issues that they can make trouble on, then it becomes much more difficult. So I've been a university leader for more than a decade now, and I've experienced both types of leadership in student union. And of course, the first is much more effective. Now, if students are in a university where the union is engaged in that kind of political activism, it's still possible for them, as Mark says, to organize themselves around sustainability and then send that invitation to meet to the leader of the university. Students often feel kind of shy. They think, well, the leadership of the university won't want to meet with us. But actually, if they just send a letter to the president or the vice chancellor and say, well, we're Students for Sustainability, we would like to come and meet with you and explain what we would like to do and discuss how we can work together, they'd be surprised how many vice chancellors would open their diary and meet with them.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you, Andrew, Inga, and Mark, all of you for your remarks in the panel discussion today. We really appreciate all three of you taking the time and for all of your leadership on ESD around the world as well. To that last point around student engagement, I know that if Peter were able to join us on the panel today on behalf of the All Africa Students Union and SOS International, that he would have clearly made that point around how students can really work together through mechanisms like Responsible Futures to work in close collaboration and partnership with institutions to really build this transformative, rapidly paced change that we need to see in our education system to meet the demands of the climate crisis and ecological emergency to create this more just and sustainable future. So with that, I want to just briefly say a little bit around looking ahead and where we're going next with the program. So we're continuing to shape and develop the program globally in partnership with institutions and with students. We are working to meet the urgent educational reform that's needed and to champion good practice across the sector, all in ways that center students' voice and their own lived experience, whilst ensuring that the program is accessible and really centers principles of justice and equity. So I really welcome everyone who's on the webinar today to keep in touch with Responsible Futures through the email address there and check out the website and the impact report launching today. Finally, I just want to say an absolutely enormous thank you to everyone who's been part of this journey over the last decade. It is really, really remarkable. And I hope many of you will take the time to read through the impact report, because the impact of this past decade is really, really remarkable. And thanks to the 48 universities and colleges who have played a really key role in shaping and making the program what it is, whether you've joined just recently or whether you were there from the very early days of the original UK pilot in 2014-15. Also, a huge thank you to the various sector organizations who have played a really key role in shaping the program, and of course to our delivery partner for the international program, the International Association of Universities. Finally, an amazing thank you and with real gratitude to our case study presenters and our panelists for joining us today. And lastly, a real thank you to the Responsible Futures team right across the SOS staff team and the International Association of Universities team. Because if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be here after this real decade of amazing achievement. So thank you all so much for joining today. I hope you'll join us in reading the impact report, celebrating what the last 10 years has looked like, and join us in what I hope the next 10 years brings. So thank you very much again, everyone, for joining us. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.